Hello, everyone. I'm waiting till my stream shows up correctly because it's live but not showing anything. Okay, we're cool. Let me know if the volume is good. You maybe give me a thumbs up in the chat if you can hear me well. There's no real lag on the screen and all that good stuff. A thumbs up in the chat if you can hear me. As you can see, my mic is precariously hanging on to my shirt this time so I can freely move my hands, as apparently I am kind of a talker with my hands. So give me a thumbs up in the chat just if everything volume wise and I guess screen wise, everything looks clear. You can hear me and all that's good. All right. Well, I'm Angela from AngelaAndThenSome. I'm just a lady, so internet, do not come at me. Well, today, tonight's discussion is a discussion first and foremost, not a lecture. So I would like feedback from you guys as we continue on. I will be asking you questions as we go through and make sure to put in the chat. Yeah. So the core thing today that we're discussing is what happens after we die. Um, I'm going to give this some wiggle room as to let some people join in if they haven't joined in yet. But yes. So I was actually kind of nervous today. So let's talk about my day just a little bit, just to give people time to show up if they so choose. Definitely nervous today. I was getting a little procrastinating. Um, First and foremost, my mind, how I learned I work, is I tend to have an all or nothing mentality. I think some of us may also understand that and deal with that. So with that all or nothing mentality, I kind of have a perfectionism issue where things aren't 100% how I think they should be or how I want them to be. I may procrastinate, run away from responsibilities, and just say, nope, not doing it. Because although I haven't done it yet, it may feel like a failure on my part. And I think a lot of us can agree with that. So, like, we suffer from that. But today we decided to push through and show up anyways and do our best, just like we can always promise to just do our best, show up, and yeah. So, what happens after we die? First, I would like to discuss our first thoughts, be it reincarnation, heaven, or nothing. What do you think happens, or what comes to your mind? So you can either type in the chat or in the comments. Reincarnation, heaven, nothing. What's the first thing that comes to mind when what happens after we die? Personally, I have an inkling or I have a feeling, inclination much more towards reincarnation. That is my own personal belief, obviously. Just my own life has kind of led me down that road to be like, huh, yes, if I am a soul within a body and I am searching to reach nirvana or to reach some top level tier of becoming one with the universe or one with God or creator, what have you, that resonated with me. That made sense. That, sorry, there's a little button here. But yeah, so that made sense for me personally. Reincarnation felt right. So yeah, however you're watching this, comments or in the chat, please type. First thoughts, what do you think happens after die? Reincarnation? Nothing? Hell? Heaven? Um, what comes to mind? So speaking of reincarnation, we can go into like beliefs around the world. Some of the beliefs around the world would be like Eastern religions, Hinduism, Buddhism. They tend to believe in reincarnation. I think they're similar, but not quite the same as Hinduism had like a strong caste system that originally wasn't a caste system, so to speak. It was, but more in the religious, spiritual sense, not in the literal sense. And then eventually, as centuries went on, it became a literal sense of a caste system. So that's kind of a bummer. But Buddhism as well, they think of, I think, go back to Hinduism for a second, reincarnation, they think of more like life lessons and karma. So, you know, you get what you get what you give. So you whatever's you gave out in the world is going to come back to you. Now that can be in the same life, that could be in a different lifetime. So you may not even know what sins or burdens you're carrying, so to speak, sins that you're carrying into the next life. But the point is, I guess, getting to the top tier of what you as your soul can get to. I guess the main point. But in Buddhism, it's more that life is about suffering. Like there is no, well, you'll just keep going and there'll be good and bad times. It's like, no, you're here to suffer to learn, but the point isn't reincarnation as learning those lessons. The point is you'll just continue the same path until you break free and decide to, meditate, let go of earthly attachment and all that stuff, I think, in that realm. And then you'll reach like nirvana or like oneness and wholeness. So two different, same, but different ideas concerning reincarnation. I personally don't quite believe in those aspects of it. I'm not Hindu or Buddhist. Personally, it's more like life lessons. You learn what you learn as you go through life, and hopefully, learning again through the next life and things like that would be um, helpful, lovely. Anyways, and going on to Western religion, I think most of us who are watching, maybe if you're more Western culture, may be familiar with this, the heaven and the hell aspect of, like, if you're a evangelical, I'm sorry, I have a hard time pronouncing that one, Christian or in those realms, or even Catholicism, it's like, I'm not sure about Catholicism, I am not Catholic. But in Christian culture, it's more so if you're saved, if you've accepted Jesus Christ as your savior, you put your sins, so to speak, on the altar, and that is, once you die, you will be judged on your good deeds, your soul, I think, essentially, if you are saved or not, and then you'll go to heaven or hell. Heaven, peaceful, eternal peace and happiness, I presume. Then hell, damnation, torture, all that not good stuff. Um, yeah. Then we got myths like Greek, Norse, Egyptian. Back in the day when I was young, much younger, like early teen, I was into Egyptian culture. That's something I hardly remember that. So if anybody knows Egyptian culture, you can just be like, yes, give us a little quick, that's what this means, life after death. I do know, um, I think your organs, heart or something, is weighed on the scales and other gods and stuff like that. So similar aspect, either you're going to be damned or go somewhere else, I presume. So I'm just curious to the audience in the chat, as well as those rewatching this later in the comments, which tradition, which tradition were you raised with? I personally was raised, like, were you raised the Eastern religion, more spiritual, or actual Hinduism, Buddhism, maybe Judaism? Yeah, Judaism, Catholicism, Christian, maybe even Egyptian, Greek, Norse mythologies and things like that, or maybe even some of those for more, maybe an interest growing up. So let me know in the chat or comments if those were of interest to you or you were raised. I personally was raised Christian. Um, Now, being raised Christian was very interesting. Um, I didn't fully believe in, there was a certain age, I think around 11, 12, or 12, that I was concerned about the damnation aspect of hell. Like, if God was all loving, why would we be going to hell and that's it, done deal, you're done? Now, obviously, some people are terrible. So I'm like, okay, yeah, but what about people who weren't exactly terrible, but maybe they didn't get saved, or, so that was pretty much my first inkling of being like, maybe I'm not as into this aspect of Christianity, thinking that this is the thing. So I think from that, I could see how my own beliefs changed since childhood. Because when I was 8, 9, 10, I didn't really question as much. You go to church, sure. You believe in God? Yeah. Jesus? Yes. But then as I got older, I was like, I don't know about that. So I think as I got older, there was actually a movie that impacted me a bit. It's called What Dreams May Come. So Robin Williams is in it. It's kind of a sad movie, but it showcases a man who pretty much loses his two children in like a car accident of some sort, and so it's very, very painful for him and his wife. Um, so it shows that grief, but then eventually his wife kind of gets very depressed as he eventually um, gets killed, I think, as well, maybe car accident actually, or helping someone else who's in a car accident, and then Oh, we have somebody a thing in the chat. Thanks. Thank you. Ricardo, Catholicism is very similar to Christianity. Basically, 99% afterlife theory is a bit more complex with heaven, hell, and purgatory. Yeah, I think limbo, purgatory, those are in Catholicism. Yes. Not super familiar with it, but yeah. Back to what I was saying about that movie that I watched. Eventually, his wife, once he passes away, his wife obviously goes into grief and despair, and then she eventually, tough subject matter here, but commits suicide. And so it's very, very heartbreaking. But as they explore his realm of heaven, he ends up meeting his children again, but in different forms, the forms that they choose to take. And it shows that other humans and other souls are there as well. And they choose different forms and have different worlds that they build, that they all like agree on. He eventually decides to go find his wife in what is considered hell, which is pretty much a torture chamber of her own making, since her soul has such a hard time understanding that all the grief that she had on earth and then there from her own suicide and everything like that. So that made an impact on me growing up when I was about 13, 14 years old, that felt more quote unquote real, of like if God, in the realm of Christianity, with God being, no, you're just damned if you didn't believe in God or you sin too much. I was like, if he's all loving, that doesn't make sense. So a movie like that kind of was impactful for me. Not any scientific basis, not any other basis, just something that I was just like, that's a good idea. I like that thought. So that was something that I think I just always kept more or less in my back pocket of, I believed hell wasn't a place that you were damned to go to forever, but obviously if your mind slash soul cannot handle the sins you dealt with on earth or things that occurred, you would essentially be your own tormentor in that regard, that you just couldn't escape that unless you eventually did get through that process. So just my 2 cents. I think like the question I asked earlier, that's how my beliefs kind of changed in childhood. And now as an adult, obviously I read more books. Things that actually did line up with reincarnation in particular, where I was like, oh, that's been studied. Awesome. I love facts and experiments and actual things. So that's how my beliefs changed in childhood. So if you would like to share how your beliefs have changed in childhood, type in the chat or in the comments, depending on how you're watching this. Otherwise, we will continue on. We can talk about near-death experiences. There's a lot of, I think they're not ad-libbed, they're usually shortened to NDEs, in which people like in the medical field, hospice care, things like that definitely may not experience firsthand, but they know some funky stuff happens when people are near death, and it's either, was it more natural or is it traumatic? These things get a little weird. Where either people say they see loved ones, or they did see a white light when they actually passed, or near death experience. So obviously the person came back. I actually watched a few videos concerning that, and the man I was watching, when he was discussing it, he explained that essentially similar to what I thought of reincarnation, but not the full journey. That he was sick, and it was 1984 when this occurred. So he was sick with the flu. He was a firefighter, and a woman, like there was a mild flu pandemic going on at that time. He's a firefighter. He got called to somebody being in an emergency situation, and when he was helping this woman who was seriously ill with that flu, she did a sigh of relief on him. He explained like a large exhale. And in that moment, he thought, yep, I am now infected with the flu. Then, sure enough, a few days passed and he gets sicker and sicker. And then he explained that as he got sicker, it was like to the point where he couldn't really move. He knew he was, terribly dehydrated. Then he called, I believe, his daughter on the phone. And all she heard him talk was like in a whisper. So she was very much concerned. So she called an ambulance for him. He went to the hospital. His wife goes there. And a day or two later, they give him like 11 liters of fluid, so he's feeling much better. But then they were going to give him some other medication, kind of like anesthesia, which people known when you are under anesthesia, some people have been known to have what is near-death experiences, because when you're under anesthesia, I think I read somewhere a long time ago that, fun fact, they don't know exactly how it works, but they do know it works. So if someone gets a little too much of what their body, they're gonna go, but then hopefully be pulled back once anesthesia it stopped. But in this story, he was explaining that the nurse started giving him some medication that was essentially like the good stuff, I guess. And he thought he was feeling better, so he should be able to go. But there were so many other people in the ward still, and all this, that little flu pandemic, I guess, was still going on. So, sorry, lost my train of thought. That little flu pandemic was still going on. So she was like, no, you haven't even seen the doctor yet, so just wait. But as he got the medication, pretty much lights went out, and he said, like, he eventually found out, yeah, he technically was like coma, died a little bit, a little bit. But when he went, he saw like the white light. He traveled. He was spending time with people. He mentioned like gnome-like figures, and he mentioned a movie that they looked like, which made me laugh because if I've read by Michael Newton, um, Lives Between Lives, he talks about reincarnation and therapy and hypnosis regression, and then eventually hypnosis regression to before people have lived this life pretty much. And that man, the original dude story, that man's original story was that eventually, it very much in line with all of that reincarnation. He saw a guide, someone laughed, they were laughing, letting him talk, but then they're like, oh, well, you got to go back. And he pretty much explained it as he knew that he was alive in that person's body. I can't remember his name, but he like was separated from him already. In his mind, he was just the spirit him and was like, nah, that guy was cool, but I don't want to go back. I'm cool. Let's reevaluate my life that I lived and we'll just move on from there. But then they made him go back. So that was a very interesting near-death experience story that as I was researching for this, I found that and I was like, oh, I wish I remembered his name. Should have wrote that down. But if I find it, you'll find it somewhere in the comments or maybe in the description later. Another comment from Ricardo. I find Christianity interesting. Most find salvation through faith. Catholics need to repent to get into heaven, and Calvinists, I believe in predestination. Oh, cool. I think I'm not sure if we're thinking about the same predestination, but in the reincarnation aspect of predestination, it is that you chose this life for very specific reasons. Not reasons that you're aware of as a conscious being now, but reasons that somewhere in your soul's journey, your guide and guides, I suppose, decided that this would be a good life. Like this is the life you needed for your soul to continue on. If that makes sense. Also know like when you speak of like science and evidence, there are like stories of children who remember past lives or things that it's like, how did this 3-year-old know that or 5-year-old know that? That's weird. I personally asked my daughter some things when she was younger, and nothing. I remember asking her when she was like 3 or 4, asking, do you remember where you were before you were here with mommy and daddy? And she was like, no. I'm like, nothing. And she was like, no, just here. I'm like, okay. And then eventually, I think one day I asked her, um, do you think I didn't say, do you think, I said, did you choose to be here? She looked at me and was like, no. I was like, you didn't choose to be here? And she said, no. And so I'm like, okay. But she looked at me and said, you did, as in I chose for her to be here, which in reality accurate because I'm the one who had her and we chose her. But yeah, so that's just fun story. Fun story. I think in the neuroscience explanations, I'm not sure if they've ever done like purposeful near-death experiences. So that's wild. State sanctioned murder in that regard because like no, it's okay, it's not murder. We'll bring them back. But I do know when it came to like astral projection and like lucid dreaming, they've studied that. And in case you're not familiar, lucid dreaming is when you're within your dream and you're well aware that you're dreaming, and maybe you can control aspects. You're more or less conscious, like you can just think about like real life and reality and know that you're dreaming. So you can kind of make your dream fun little world. And then astral projection is more so you have spiritually left your body and projected yourself elsewhere and more of the spiritual realm. But I know from studies when I watch some things about that, when they've done that, there is no neurological difference between astral projection and lucid dreaming. So without doubt, it hasn't been proven. But I think there has been cases where obviously people astral project and then know information that is really suspect of how would they know that if they didn't go to XYZ or get the information elsewhere. So just fun little tidbit. Just asking in the chat or in the comments, has anybody here ever had a near-death experience and would willing to share? I personally have not. I have astral projected, I believe, and definitely have had lucid dreams numerous times. Very creative dreamer, apparently, and very persistent dreamer in the sense that I remain conscious. So maybe that's a me thing, and I need to learn to relax, or that's just how my brain works. So even in astral projection, lucid dreaming, we can just segue a little into that and just let me know in the chat or the comments if you've experienced that as well. Hello to those who have just joined the chat. Thank you for joining. So like I explained and discussed the neuroscience explanations, if possible, would we actually want science to explain everything about death? Would we want to be able to be like, oh, this is what occurs? Okay, 0 to 30 seconds, minute to 30, 2 days later, this. Would we want that? I guess kind of. It'd be I think it'd be more interesting and more beneficial for those who are left behind, obviously, because you can kind of time things and know that certain things are happening. I want to say there are certain religions, I can't remember. There are certain religions I can't quite remember, maybe spiritual practices, that they consider the soul leaving the body, like the funeral rites is that it takes like a week for the soul to move on completely from this world. So like during the funeral or mourning periods, grief and stuff, it's very important for you to notice when like a breeze comes by or like a butterfly and things like that, because the that could be the soul reaching out trying to comfort the living. But it takes that week long for us for them to be being processed, pretty much being letting go of the physical realm. And then it's like up to 40 days, like the full cycle is like 40 days until they are completely like off the physical realm, unless there is some extreme grief or like another family member keeping them there, because obviously love is love and sometimes you just don't want to leave people. And I think after a full year it's like 100% like they have continued on, and the cycle is complete more or less. So reincarnation, heaven, um, the other place, the other place. And we have another in the chat. Ricardo states that him and his mom are very active dreamers. They have very vivid dreams and can occasionally lucid dream. Cool, good for you, bro. We have another comment from Danielle. No NDE, but when I was very stressed and sick, I prayed for relief and a very clear calm came over me shortly after. Yes, I would explain. I personally would think that's like either a loved one or a spirit guide or some wholeness guardian angel have you. I've also read that where people say when you're going through something, you can pray quietly to yourself, but also to let it out and actually say what you're suffering from, what you're looking for, things like that. And then whoever spirits or whoever's around you, hopefully good, will hear that and try to assist you in some way, since they actually are able, if they're able to interact. And especially, I think some people who go into spirit guides and talking to their guides and things like that discuss that, I think. Moving on. Deja vu. Who here put in the chat, yay or nay, you've experienced deja vu? Personally, I have numerous times. And I think that's one of those things you may not be able to recall every time, but you kind of know when you have. You're like, oh yeah, that's been a thing. The deja vu, like either reincarnation, believing in a past thing has happened before, or you're preordained to have this moment. It's just really interesting. About sensing loved ones that had passed. I think Danielle in her comment, how the calm came over her, that like in some spiritual aspect or the religious aspect could have been seen as a loved one or a past spirit, even ancestral spirit for some, helping somebody go through things like that. Have you ever, anybody in the chat or in the comments, felt a loved one around you after they passed, either immediately or weeks following. Personally, I wouldn't say I have not in the physical realm, but I definitely had dreams of loved ones who have passed that I would just like, whoa, what are they doing here? Sometimes they were weird dreams, sometimes they were just interesting or like, oh, okay, and they gave me a message or two, and I was like, okay, cool, I guess. We got a response from Olivia. My feelings of deja vu always happen during my dreams. Very interesting. That is pretty interesting. During dreams, as if during dreams, as if you have already experienced it, like in real life, is playing out in the dream, or like the dream is showing what's going to happen soon in real life. That would be my question. But answer that on your own time if you would like to. If you don't want to share, no problem. But please respond to the comment in the comments or the chat. And has anybody? Oh, I experience them in my dreams, and then months later they'll happen. Oh, okay. Ooh, a little precognition. Was it precognition? That's like when it goes into like psychic stuff. Maybe a different discussion for another day, talking about psychic things, spirituality, psychic stuff. Let me know in the comments you're interested. I'll probably narrow it down more so it's actually better in case as a discussion, but awesome. Has anybody ever had a personal experience that made them wonder if there's more, like something that maybe made you feel, yes, heaven is real, or made you feel more like, ooh, reincarnation is real, or made you feel like, I think nothing happens when that time comes. um, I think for me, it just goes into a lot of times with movies and things. I think recently, I think it was 2019, 2020, another movie came out called Soul. And you may have seen it like on Disney Plus and whatnot. It wasn't like a big hit since it came out during COVID and all that, but I think plenty of people watched it. And that was another where I still hadn't read anything about reincarnation. What dreams may come when I was 13, 14. So that kind of just stayed with me throughout the years. And then as I got older, by this time when Soul came out, I was 30, and I watched that and I was like, that kind of vibes with me. And then by this time now, being 35 and then reading some more books, I was like, hey, it's like that movie. So it's very interesting in my own experience relating those thoughts. I thought that resonates, that feels on the money. And then reading actual books and studying and studies actually is like, oh, that's a thing. So you kind of resonate with other creators who must have like written the movies themselves, who probably have studied this stuff and thought through the things too. So that was interesting. Ricardo asked if I've ever watched the movie Heretic. Is that the one more recently with Hugh Grant? If it is, I have not watched it, but I did watch Found Flicks. If you're interested in what YouTube channels I watch, and they did a Heretic explained, so it pretty much goes beat by beat through the movie, what questions are asked, and how everything occurs in the movie. So essentially, I watched it, but like an abridged version, if that is the movie we're discussing. Um, but yes, in that regard, yes. So if you want to ask me questions, you can keep going. We're going to continue on, and I'll just pop back through the chat and see what's up. I would like to ask everybody, what is your gut feeling about the afterlife? Like, is there anything that you've ever saw, read, even if it's a religious text or not, or even if you did go to a church that just hit you somewhere, like, I want to say visceral, but like gut wise, where you felt like even if you couldn't explain it like fully making sense, you're like, something about this resonates or feels on point with me. And like I already shared, the movie Soul, the movie What Dreams May Come. I think when I was younger, even younger than that, actually, there was a movie called The Time Machine. It's originally based off the H.G. Wells um, short story, I believe. Numerous versions of it, from the 1960 versions to like one in the early 2000s with Guy Pearce, and that was the one I watched. Um, but essentially, that it's a time machine. So a scientist creates a time machine. He tries to change the past a bit, does not work. So he's like, can the past not be changed? He goes to the future. and then he sees how much the world changes and detrimentally so, and shenanigans ensue. But the point was, as I was like, I think 9 or 11 during that, probably closer to 11, that hit me as something that resonated, just in the sense of realizing how time passes. If you're here or not, time continues on. So that made me kind of, I guess, realize mortality in that regard. So that's interesting. Ricardo states, back on to the movie Heretic. Apparently, yes, that was the movie he was referring to. Yes, I love how it critiques different beliefs. I think fiction is a very powerful tool to engage these ideas, which can end up affecting the world. I agree wholeheartedly, as I was not aware of this until just like a few months ago, how much I talk about movies and stories and books, and pretty much uh, even if I don't fully watch a movie, I watched abridged versions. I watch movies explained, even if something like a horror movie or something that was like, I'm not going to watch this whole saga of 6 movies, because that's like 12 hours of movie or maybe even more. But I will watch like abridged versions and breakdowns, because I just like the idea of how people tell stories and creativity. And I think in my own personal journey of that, it kind of goes back to, I think, my own upbringing of being Christian, not being Christian, but being, brought up in Christianity, was one of the things. I think either the Bible somewhere states like angels can't sing, like something that wasn't bestowed on angels was the gift of like creation. So like singing and things like that weren't there, but human beings were given the gift of creation, so man can create and destroy. And one of those gifts is also singing and stuff like that, I think. So not the singing part, but like the storytelling aspect of creation. So I think that's something that resonates with me, where I'm like, super awesome gift that we got to create stories, tell fables, oral histories, and pass down things from serious stories of, hey, this is how you grow X crop, to fun stories of like, I just made up this story to entertain these children here that I'm, trying to keep occupied. So that's something that resonates with me too. So, what happens after we die? Why do you think it matters? Does it even matter? In your opinion, people type in the chat, does it matter? Yes. Does it not matter? No. What happens after we die? Do you even care that much about it? Mildly so? Um, is it something that keeps you up at night, or is it something more you've learned to let go, or maybe something you never even, cared that much about? Like you just don't. Ricardo states, I believe there's a concept in science about energy or matter not being able to be created or destroyed in that sense. I believe in reincarnation. Okay, cool. Olivia stated, I don't think it matters. Yeah. You live the best life you can and do your best. And if you're happy with the journey, cool. If you're not, that kind of sucks. Any moment's a new moment to change it. Um, but yeah. And then Victoria states, we are promised death one day. That is accurate. I think currently, right now, though, in the longevity circles and transhumanism and things like that, some people are trying to be like, let's not die. And for me personally, like I said, reincarnation is kind of a thing in my head. Not necessarily like that is the end all be all, but more so it could still join into Christianity. There is still a creator, there's still oneness. But it is the journey and the process to getting your soul into the highest state it can be. So those who are like trying to extend human life, cool. Like quality of life, sure. Like I agree, quality. Like if someone lives to be 100, maybe 120, but like they're solid, they're doing hikes still, they're playing with the grandkids, the great grandkids. That's the most important thing to me. More quality of life than quantity. But then also, if you're not spiritually or mentally, emotionally growing, then it's kind of like, what is the point of living that long? If you're still the same person you were when you were like 15, but you're 92 or 110 or 150, and God forbid you have power and money and prestige and stuff, and you're just like that same mentality, but that maybe not making the best choices, that would suck. I think that also plays in another show I watched called Altered Carbon, where people were able to live essentially like 400, 900, 1200 years, because their consciousness was able to be uploaded again into a new body. And yeah, that's pretty much what happened. Some people just weren't growing, and they were still in charge, and it was a dystopian world for sure. Let's see. Olivia states, I get, I assume she said, I get the odd feeling though where my loved ones are. Not sure what she means by that, but keep typing, girl. I will do my best. Um, but does nothing too much to dwell too much on it. Okay, yeah. Um, yeah, I think not dwelling on it, but definitely feeling the feelings, processing them, knowing why you're sad, not pushing it away, giving yourself maybe a good cry, or doing something that you know that loved one enjoyed, or watching a show they liked, or a movie, or even bringing it up to someone else who's close to you, so they can know that you're feeling your feels. And yeah, like you don't need to dwell on where they went, what happened, but knowing that they're gone now, but still feeling the feelings. Victoria states, I do not know what will happen after that. We can only have faith that there's more uh, after this life is done. Danielle states, I love that show, Altered Carbon. Yes, sci-fi dystopian weird world. Olivia also states, have you ever heard of the egg theory of reincarnation? I have not, Olivia. Please in the chat enlighten me, because I have not. I also think if I follow the logic of that, maybe it is like living the life as an egg, maybe. And then when you break through the egg, if you're a chick now, you don't remember how life was in the egg. Maybe it's similar to a butterfly metamorphosis thing. I don't know. But please enlighten. And so, with all saying all that, your personal opinions, what do we all like in the chat? Just write what you personally. I lost connection for a second there, so my apologies. Olivia states, it's where we are all the same soul living all these different lives to learn empathy and wisdom. Eventually, once we live all the possible lives, we emerge as a godlike being. Yes, I've heard some. I didn't know it was the egg theory, but I heard of something like that where it was saying like, yes, like the reason why, do unto others as you want them to do unto you is because you are all souls. Like from the poorest to the wealthiest to the most traumatized to the least traumatized, you are all the souls. So if you will one day, I think it's like reincarnation where you will experience life from the other soul. So if you hurt somebody emotionally, physically, whatever, at some point in your many lives, you will experience that same hurt. You may not remember any of it, but you will experience it. So I didn't know it was called, that was a theory it was called, but I did hear something, or maybe that may not be it. That may be something similar or adjacent. But that was the point where you are technically every soul, and every soul is you. Um, yeah. I also heard of like theories where they say like in that regard that kind of like we're all cells in a higher being, maybe like the universe itself, and wanting to experience what it is to be alive, quote unquote, in a different context. So that's what we all are, just versions of a larger godlike being who wants to experience life. Interesting. Olivia, every act of kindness or harm we put on others actually connected to ourselves. Yes, that's yes. And I think that also goes into like karmic beliefs too. Semi goes into that of like what you get what you give. I think that just goes into regular life. People explain like if you want to interact with others, be heard or something, you got to start speaking, and then people notice you speaking, and then start listening, vice versa, and then ask you to speak and stuff like that. So yeah, that's very interesting. Thank you for sharing that, Olivia. Well, we're going to be wrapping this up. So let's ask a little bit of a fun question, a little thought experiment, and let me know in the comments what you personally agree or would prefer. What's scarier, dying and there's nothing, like you just shut off the computer, it's done, nothing's going on, or living forever? Now there are theories where they explain living forever in the sense that it will get boring, because even if you do all these things in your life, like learn all the instruments, learn all the languages, perfect them, um, then what? But then at a certain point, you may start forgetting, like the first 500 years of your life when you're like at year 50,000 and so forth and so forth. So it's kind of like, is it really you? Like you are living forever technically. physically, you may look similar enough to be like, yeah, it's you. But if you forgot like the first 10,000 years of your life because your memory was finite or whatever, are you still you? If you don't remember any of that stuff. So it's kind of like meeting yourself when you're 10. Is that really you? But you're like, yeah, because there probably is some memories and things. But maybe meeting yourself when you're 5, technically it's you, but it's like not the same person. Or even right now, I'm 35 years old, but meeting me when I'm like 90, we're the same but quite different. Probably hopefully she's experienced way much more than I have. Um, Olivia states, no offense, but if I turned into a vampire, I'm turning all of you. Okay, okay, noted. I'm gonna be a coven. Thanks, Olivia, for that insight into your psyche. We're all living together forever. Thank you very much for that insight. So anybody else, what's scarier, if there was actually nothing or living forever? Um, I think when it comes to living forever, like I said, quality over quantity. And so I would more like the quality of life. I think having the choice to be like, okay, I am done here. But obviously, if your body or body, let's, not sure if it'd be, oh, sorry, touched my, not sure if you'd be a completely still organically physical body at that point. But living forever in that regard, like still having, I guess, bodily autonomy, the choice to be like, yeah, I think I'm done, I'm tired. Ricardo states, in the same way that a child might not remember the world before they are born, I don't think adults should fear what happens after we are gone. That's true. I think in general, fearing anything in life is probably not the best. Like, fear is a great tool for survival. I think for a lot of us, we want to do more than survive. We want to like live, safety, happiness, wholeness, whatever that means for you and stuff like that. So yeah. Victoria states, I believe it would be or feel different after you leave this body. So I'm going to say it won't be terrible or horrible unless you have some unresolved bad internal things you never dealt with. Yeah, in your body, but spirit wise, it would be awesome. Okay, yeah, I think that goes into my spiel earlier about heaven, hell, and damnation. How it just didn't resonate well with me as a child. Like thinking that God is God and He loves all of us. Why would He just be like, no, you're done? um, I think even for some of us who are parents, maybe like, yes, your child can be one of the worst of the worst, and you may rightly so be like, you need to be put away so you don't harm other people. But you still be like, I love you as my child. Now, then obviously that goes in your own boundaries, knowing like if that person is mentally not stable, you would need to be aware of that. I think when Christianity they discuss God as being like all of us are children. I think personally, as I've gotten older and seeing things on a more of a spiritual, I don't want to say battlefield, but spiritual plane of the current politics, current culture stuff, I'm kind of like, oh, yeah, I see the fact that we're all children. I totally get that now. Let's see. Danielle states, living forever. uh, how would you form a life if there's no parameters? With all that life, maybe it might put pressure to create a new meaning. Yeah, that's accurate. How long will it take before you're like, okay, I need to give back to others, or I need to create something out besides myself, right? Like, if you really had eternity ahead of you, would you just be like, I'm going to build myself a library? I'm going to learn all this stuff. Or are you going to be like, I'm going to collect these things so humanity as a whole, those who aren't allowed to live forever or who can't, can learn what they can, or even me, someone be like, I will synthesize all this information. So instead of reading 150 books every day, they just only have to read these 10 every day. Um, Victoria stated, but in a spirit form, it's got to be different. Okay. Uh, I love the conversation we're having. Everybody give your opinions on stuff. Um, Ricardo states, I grew up super Catholic and a big deal is repenting for your sins. Yes. But I disagree with that because in the idea someone can choose to keep making bad choices and repent at the last second. Yes. That was something I found similar in Christianity where they're like, well, you just have to be saved and be a Christian. As if that omitted, if you did things, you prayed about it, you asked God for forgiveness. I think maybe in the beginning that act of asking for forgiveness was more telling yourself cataloging your own sins for yourself, because the first step is identifying the problem. And that problem may be you, but cataloging those and then asking for forgiveness because you understood the errors of your ways. But as I guess when en masse, when a lot of people are told that, there's going to be plenty of people who are just more like, I don't know, I'll just pray or I'll just go to church later, it'll be fine. Instead of taking in the actual lessons, processing the self awareness and the value systems themselves to be like, oh, that's how I messed up. Oh, I feel bad about that. How do I do better, or can I be better next time? So yeah, I totally get that. So back into reincarnation. Just a fun little thought. Reincarnation is a thing. If, why do you think you're here? Maybe right now, maybe in general. Why do you think you, as a soul, not having first person knowledge of who you are right now, but you know yourself the best, your core components, why do you think you chose the life you chose? Is there something you think you're trying to learn specifically? Maybe some of us have already dealt with it. Like I know some people anger issues, but pinpointing how to properly process them, making instead of being anger and festering anger, it turns into like passion and putting it towards the right things. Um, Maybe it's you found a passion in like something physical, like cooking, but then now you realize it's not the fact of cooking. It's actually providing nutrients for physical bodies of others or showing love in that regard. So you feel like very close to being like, this is a core component of why I chose to be here. Um, Ricardo states, salvation through faith is much as most other denominations of Christian. Is in most other denominations of Christianity, which, like you said, is very similar. Yeah. And Victoria states, Jesus chose me to be here. So Victoria, in that regard, more so believes in not the randomization, but in the outside influence choosing your soul to be here today as you were the one to be born. Cool. Um, Ricardo Kobe said, "Job's not done. I feel as a person I have to do good and help others, and that's probably why I came back." Okay, so you found yourself that there's something in your soul that's telling you you're meant to be, you're helping others. Maybe you're not sure exactly in what way, but maybe in daily life you try to be kind, you try to be helpful, you try to make people's lives a little bit easier. Um, Victoria states, so I guess I have to live my best life here and not be an asshat. Yes, I think that's one of the primary things a lot of us should keep in mind. Whatever our beliefs are, is to do our best here and not to cause harm to others and do the best we can. Even I think that went back to my original, I guess, creed of my life, where it's like, as long as you're not harming yourself or others, cool. You do you. It's your business. You want to share it, that's cool. Uh, Obviously, there's some wiggle room in that of like what is considered harming yourself, what is considered harming others, but for the most part, most without just trying to poke holes in things, it's like okay. Oh right. So we talked about reincarnation plenty. We talked some about Hinduism, Buddhism, definitely talked about Christianity and Catholicism, considering most of us here are from more familiar with Western cultures, things that have reached Western culture. I'm gonna look up more things than to call it Western culture. That's colonization, colonial culture. Okay. We did a little bit of science. We talked about some near-death experiences. I believe I found a lot of helpful information if anybody's interested in near-death experiences or more the science aspect of all of that. I forgot her full last name, but I know her first name was Malik, Malik. Some of you may know her better as Blossom, or even from Big Bang Theory as Sheldon's significant other. She's actually like a PhD doctorate in like neuroscience or something like that. She has a YouTube channel that has a lot of shorts as well as full stories of near-death experiences, people experiencing like their own spirituality and things like that from a scientific perspective, as well as she seems to be very understanding and open to like seeing people as whole people and like communicating with others. So I would recommend that channel if you're interested. We have Ricardo states, I think there's a lot of good people who I've met who embody Christian ideals, but they have the same politics as I do. Yes. I have actually, speaking of politics, a little segue before we end this conversation today. I've noticed there has been an uptick on my reels showing me some politicians and speakers who actually seem to embody the actual ideal of Christ, being more Christ-like, and that's actually what their platform is, where they're like, be good to each other. We're trying our best doing stuff like that. So that's actually interesting, on that grander scale of seeing those people start coming up and talking about like real genuine Christian ideals of loving your neighbor, feeding the homeless, being out there talking to people, trying to reach each other and actually love each other as like thy neighbor and stuff like that. So that's been really nice. It's kind of scary because, dangerous world out there, so that things can get a little wild. But it's amazing to see that passion and that, you know, that outreach happening on like a real scale and not just being said as like, oh, I do that, but like, who's are you? Have you ever even, talked to a homeless person, stuff like that? Danielle states, maybe I'm here to bridge gaps in differences, a mediator type, and build communities. Oh, very interesting, Danielle. All the goodness to you, and hope you figure out that path and like more pinpoint where, or maybe just in daily life. Ricardo states, and typically I associate Christians with opposing politics, but from a young age, now I have met people who embody their religious ideals while being progressive. Interesting. Yes, same here. That's one of the reasons why I had difficulty trusting or feeling safe to go to churches in my area, as I, for the most part, live on a predominantly class middle class, upper middle class predominant area, a white Christian type area. Now I don't know about these people sometimes. But the point is getting to know your neighbors, talking to them, reaching subject to see actually like, because most of the time in my own life and growth aspect, I've realized a lot of people don't even know who they are. So me just being there asking questions is usually the best eye opener for them to think about things, and then even just sharing my own opinions in a understanding, open way, not passing judgment or trying to get them to think like me, but just be like, okay, now what's your opinion? So let's see. Victoria, different strokes for different folks. That's right, Victoria. That's a lovely way of putting that. Thank you for your addition to the conversation. Ricardo then states, I think all religions and beliefs have merit and by extension should be respected and platformed without putting down others. Yes. Respect people's boundaries, respect people. We're all here. It's kind of like, we're all here in this little rat maze together. Don't pee and poop on everybody. Don't scratch and be a jerk. Just be like, wow, okay, we're all here. How do we make this place look better? Who wants to, decorate? Who wants to put some curtains up? Let's figure this out. Um, yep, Victoria said it. We all have to share the world together. That is true. So, like, the point is trying to make it the best for everybody, as close as possible, or what works the most for everybody. And then those people fall through the gaps, figure out why they're falling through their gaps, and then just start trying to pick them back up. And Ricardo says most people believe in the same type of afterlife. Um, okay. I don't, I'm not sure if most people, well, if you go to the Christian aspect of Western culture, then they probably do have the same picture of afterlife. Not sure if they fully believe it, because, if you believe you're going to be damned to all eternity to hell by your behaviors or sins, then, you need to act right. But yeah, okay. Yes, for example, the big three religions. Yes, Ricardo, I agree with that. Okay, so anybody else in the comments want to share their 2 cents, either be it an anecdotal story, something you read, like a book or a movie you saw that was like, that was good. Share it with the rest of the chat so we can all maybe remember and watch it or read it, or just enjoy that personal touch of a story ourselves to be like, interesting. Victoria states most people believe there's a higher power. Considering Western culture, I would agree there. Even in some, Eastern culture, like I said, Hinduism, Buddhism, it's not a specific being. But in Hinduism, it is a specific being, kind of. I think it's Brahma. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but it's less like a specific being and more like the universe, oneness. The all of it is like all of it. So it's less like him, God, and more like everything is part of Brahma, type of thing. So yeah. Victoria states as a movie to share, Gladiator. Any specific reason, Victoria? Or just you like that movie? Okay, final chat question for you all before we close this little segment up. Drop one word in the chat or even an emoji, whatever you feel resonates, that sums up your view of the afterlife right now. Do you still think of what you first thought, like reincarnation, hell, heaven, nothing, or are you kind of like a mixture? Maybe go through all your little emojis and be like this, and this. Get fun with it. Show your personality. Even if something is more heartfelt, show that too. Or even use words if you don't want to do emojis. That's totally fine too. Let me see if I can find something in the chat to put. Uh, we're looking, and I'm trying to do it quickly. That's not where that search is. Nope, that doesn't have anything pop up in there. There we go. I did a thing. All right, that is it for today. Please like the video, subscribe if you haven't already. Join me next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Not sure what we're discussing yet, so I guess it's a surprise for all of us involved. Find me on my Instagram as well as at AngelaAndThenSome, as I will be posting more things regularly there, as well as here on YouTube Shorts, and YouTube videos are going to be upcoming. Different types of videos are going to be coming, not just going to be these deep dive lives where it kind of gets heavy. We're going to have some fun videos coming up in the next couple of months, starting on the regular as well. So thank you all for showing up. Thank you, Olivia, for showing up with Poncho, apparently. Thank you so much. And I am super happy that we had this great conversation. I enjoyed it. I hope it was enjoyable for you. And keep growing, keep learning, keep doing our best. And I'll see you next time. Bye.